Hello. A couple of days ago I made a video on how to make a handle for a sickle, because one of the people who subscribed to me asked for more information on that, and I've got it given. It's appreciated. And I thought that there's a few things about the sickle before I go off the subject completely, is that I'd like to make a few comments on it, and perhaps write a few things that I may have misled you on over the preceding videos that I made on similar subjects. So I'll go through them one at a time, and I hope I don't forget what I got in mind. But this is my sickle, and if I go through the history of it, I bought it about 60 years ago, and somewhere about then, and I took it home, and my father said, "Oh, you bought a sickle, have you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You bought a left-handed sickle." Didn't know what he meant at the time, and I thought, "Oh." And I said, anyway, I said, "I am left-handed, I'm ambidextrous." So he said, "Well, it doesn't make a great deal of difference anyway." Now then, there's a lot of truth in that, but it makes a little bit of difference, and when you're sickling, a little bit of difference goes a long way. And so what he meant by a left-handed sickle, and I may have misled you on this, is that if you put the sickle down with your right hand, then you cannot see the bevel. If you put it down with your left hand, you can see the bevel. Now then, the bevel is like a bevel on a mirror. This is the flat surface, this is the width of the sickle. I hope I got you. This is the flat surface. Just bring that back, because I don't want to have to alter this. So this is the sickle, and this is the flat surface, and if you put it down on the flat surface so it flats, you've got the bevel here, like the bevel on a mirror. You've got two edges, it's flat, and it's this equal thickness, and then it goes to an edge about halfway through, and that's the bevel. If you turn it over, it hasn't got a bevel, it's a flat surface. And that is a left-handed sickle, because you've got to be able to see the bevel, and that's a left-handed sickle. And if you've seen the bevel on this side with your right hand, if you've seen the bevel, it'd be a right-handed sickle. As my father says, it doesn't make a great deal of difference, but it makes a significant amount of difference. So when I was nipper, I suppose, well, more than a nipper, teenager, it didn't bother me, because I could use it with my left hand. But over the years, I become right-handed. That's very odd, I know it may sound, but you sort of migrate in these things. And I started to use it more and more with the right hand. So I get used to sharpen it as a right-handed sickle, even though it's left-handed. Now then, if you sharpen it with your with a left-handed sickle like that, you sharpen it with it on your left side, and you hold it with your left hand like that. And therefore, when you pick up the stone, and this is a cigar stone made for sharpening sickles, you go along there like that. And when I sharpen it with my left hand, I tend to turn it like that, as well as go along there. I tend to turn it. The reason for that is that otherwise, if you go along, as that angle increases, then that tends to get bigger, and you want to try and keep the bevel at an equal thickness. So I turn it like that, and then you come along there. This is where you really sharpen the sickle. That's the sharpening. This is to push the burr back. All you're doing is straightening it out, because as you do that, you turn the burr slightly towards that end, and this turns the burr back, or it knocks it off. So you like that. Now then, that's the way you should do it. But I was using it like a right-handed sickle, because I do use it more and more right-handed now, and therefore what I do, I go like that, and I do it this way around. Now what I do, I just check, because that's the handle side. Now then, what I do here is I use the flat edge like that, and then I sharpen it at the back like that. And I've shown you how to do this. I should have corrected it a long time ago, and I just thought it didn't matter to you, so I just show you how I do it, and that's how I do it. Now then, that is how you do it. Now then, it's a little bit more difficult doing it that way because you cannot see the bevel, and it's the bevel that matters when you're sharpening, because all you're doing is pushing the burr back on this flat surface here, on the flat surface, whereas on the other side you are forming the edge because there's less metal to work, and you're pressing a little bit harder, and therefore that's where you're sharpening the sickle, turning the burr back, or turning the burr back, and that's how you sharpen it. Now then, so that's what I wanted to rectify. So if you're a left-handed person, that's what I want to tell you, and you're looking for a sickle, then when you pick it up with your left hand and put it on the table, you should be able to see the bevel. If you're a right-handed person, then you should be able to see the bevel, and therefore you've got a left-handed sickle like that, and a right-handed sickle with the bevel there. That's the important bit. Semi-important, because I said to you, you can sharpen them both the way round. And the thing about it is, if you've got a left-handed sickle, what happens is that it's flat against the ground, and then the foliage, as it goes off, goes away better. Whereas if you turn it upside down, and you turn it using the sickle upside down, which I do actually, more than a lot, but I can use both hands, but I generally use my right hand, and therefore the bevel is underneath, and it doesn't cut quite as good. And I quite like cutting my left hand because I do feel a difference, but I cut with both hands, and that's that. So that's the one thing I want to mention, probably the most important thing. Now then, the other thing, well, there are many other things, but we did make a handle for a sickle. I said for a sickle, and it's that one, because there's no thing for the tang on it, like this one. You can see the little difference for the tang, and the tang is the sickle continues through the metal sickle continues through, and it tapers as it goes through the shaft, and it comes to there, and then you put it on, and then the blacksmith or the sickle manufacturer would put a very small washer on there, and then he would hammer that over like a rivet, and that would last for years and years and years. The only reason it didn't last is people put them in the shed, never used them for 20 years or so because it forgot how to use them, and then the wooden handle would rot away or get worm eaten, so you had to replace the handle. That's why I showed you how to replace the handle. Now then, somebody told me that they bought a sickle recently and it didn't have a tang on it. It must be a different method. If it hasn't got a tang on it, which is the metal that goes through there, it's not a proper sickle. It's a copy. You know, they shouldn't be calling them sickles, because it's almost certainly not made out of forged steel. This is forged steel. That would be made out of pressed steel. What's the difference? If you want to make a cheap copy of something, you get a sheet of metal coming along, and you get a stamper that's stamping them out, and they'll sell them to you for brand new for £6 each. You can't buy one of these today. You've stopped making them because everybody's buying the £6 one. If you had to try and buy that today, as it stands, second hand, it would cost you somewhere between £40 and £80. Okay, so and the stamped out ones will very rarely have a tang on it, probably never, because if they had a tang on it, it would bend here. It's very, very narrow there, and you cannot bend that sickle. It's made of strong steel. The reason that the steel is strong and it's hard and it's suitable for using on cigar stone is that it is forged steel. They were made in Sheffield or in the Sheffield district or around the country, and sometimes in America as far as I know. They were made by very small firms, and they used to get the steel as a bar, and then they would forge it. They would forge it. Some would forge it actually all by hand, just off an anvil, and they would forge that sickle by hand, and they would forge a tang in it, because there's no other way you could do it. It would have to be on a tang. But that tang, because they're forging it, they're heating it up in the furnace or in the blacksmith where they put the coke in and all that, heat it up. Then when it's hard, then they'd hammer it in it, and then they'd do it again, and then they'd hammer it a bit more, and then they'd do it again. Every time they hammer it, they're drawing some carbon out of it. Every time you hit steel, you reduce you take the impurities out of it, and you can see that it's forged because they've left the forge on it. You can see the forging marks on it, and therefore it gets harder and harder, and therefore it gets tougher and harder, and that's why you can use that on that. If you've got, instead of that, you've got 2 rivets there, and there's nothing coming out of there, you haven't got a tang, you've got a little bit of a handle, and sometimes you can see metal down here. They are crap. I don't like using words, but they are rubbish. So, but you got the problem, you can't buy these anymore. I think there's only one in Dunsford, which is in Devon, not far from where I live. I think it's Dunford's. I've never been there, but I think they do make, but probably not anymore, make sickles. So there we are. There's a ray of light on the horizon there in that, and perhaps I shouldn't tell you this because I was hoping to buy a sickle very soon, and a right-handed sickle, and I was going to bring it back from the dead, so to speak, because it's in a bad state of repair. It's on eBay. It's £5, or it's £6.50 for another one, and I would put use an angle grinder with a Norton Blaze wheel, put that in the vise, and I would bring that sickle back. But I'm not all that well at the moment, and therefore I don't want to take on that challenge, but I could do. I've never actually brought him back that far, you know, but there is possibly a chance. And otherwise, there is these sickles available, and they are available online or whatever, and on eBay or on Gumtree or places like that, or in car boot sales, or in junk shops, or you know, places. But they're getting scarcer. So that's that. So that's it. Now then, as far as if you're sharpening it and you're having trouble sharpening it, then and whether you know whether you're getting a proper angle, well, what you can do, I don't do it, but what you can do is if you get a pencil and you put lines on there like that, quite distinctive marks on there, right the way, pencil marks. So you got pencil marks all along, horizontal, like you know, coming across the blade, and you can do it on the back as well. And then you can identify by doing that, when you're sharpening, you can identify, I'll do it in the left-handed way because it's a left-handed sickle, but I'll do it in the left-handed way. I hope I'm still on screen because I've got a natural ability of getting off the screen. But when you're doing that now, and I can't really use it here because, well, but when you're doing that, and that, you can then see, because you've got a pencil mark on, how you're wearing away the sickle. Because if the pencil mark goes entirely at the same time, then you know that you're getting some idea. But you can feel it. You can feel. I feel when I'm coming along there. I know that I'm right because I can hear the difference. And if it's right here, generally speaking, it's right there. See, and that's all you got to do. But if you want to get quite good at it, you want to be on the same plane. It wants to be a flat edge. And if that pencil mark disappears at the same speed, but if it disappears off one part and goes another, you know you're not got your sickle quite right, and you adjust your angle slightly, and then you can turn over and you can look at the flats on here, and you can see the pencil mark is disappearing as we go along, so you know that you're getting it right. So that's that. And the other thing is that I said to you that I was making an angle, a handle for a sickle, and this is the one that I made for the billock. Now the handle on a billock and on a sickle is slightly different in the the thickness of it, because that handle is slightly thicker than that handle, slightly thicker. And the reason is that you need a little bit more body because you're using it like that angle, using it like that. But with a sickle, you're using it like that. So instead of coming up that angle, using it at this angle. And your handle changes, and not using it like that, are you? You're using it like that. So therefore, you've got it up more of an angle. So you, to be comfortable, to use that on that handle, you'd need it to be slightly thinner, because it's a little bit uncomfortable if it's that thick and you're trying to use it like that. So you need it to be slightly thinner. Let's see, we've got, there's a little, I don't know, a vernier I suppose. I got that in a junk shop, and it's like a mechanical vernier. It shows imperial and metric measurements, and you can go there and you get the measurement off there. It's got a little scale on here, but I don't need to know that. All I want to know is the thickness of that, of the difference of that handle. So it looks on here, and it looks to be somewhere between 2 and 3 mil, yeah, about 3 mil thinner than that one. So if I use that on a sickle, I'll make the tang to suit. I'll put it on, but before I do that, I'll thin that down by 3 mil, because obviously the guy who made that is much more brainier than me when it comes to making sickles, and if that was good enough for him, I can learn from him, and it'll be good enough for me, and I'm sure that'll be right. So someday I hope, God willing, that I'll be putting that on a sickle. I've seen some of these sickles on eBay. They are good value, and I might be out competing you now, because you'll be looking and you'll be outpricing me. But I might buy one, and I might bring it back. But if I do, I'll buy a right-handed sickle, so that the bevel is there, so that then I can use that sickle for my left hand and that sickle for my right hand. So there we are. I wanted to clarify those things, and do you know that's made? It's got on it just Western Germany. So there, it's a beautiful made little thing. It must have been quite cheap, but it's very good. Very impressed with it. So there we are. So if you're looking for a sickle, put it up like that, standing upright. You've got to cut grass, and as you bring it along, it's got to cut. So if you get something like a saw, back of a saw, and you put that vertical and not horizontal, you'll see the amount of cut it gets. And it's just where I have finished. Hope I'm in vision, but you can see where I just finished sharpening it, and that's where your grass would come along and get cut in that arc there. So that's about the arc. So that's about the size you want, the size of sickle. You don't want it too thick that way. You don't want it too long. You don't want it too heavy, and you want a little bit of back weight. So every you turn it, it's trying to do that all the while. If you were to try, it feels happier doing that. So there we are, and as I say, you don't want it too long, and you want a little bit of meat in it, and you would be able to bring a sickle like that back. I mean, as I say, some sickles haven't got a bevel on, and the very older ones haven't. So that's it. But if I was to bring that back, I would probably, oh, I've got it here. Where's the vise on there? Yeah. But if I was to bring that back, you see, that's switched off, I hope. But I would probably try and do it with a Norton Blaze wheel, and I put it in the vise, put this in the vise, and I would use it there. But I won't show you to do that because it's a little bit dangerous, but that's how I would endeavour to do it. And I may do it one day, and if I do, I'll show you a video of it. But that's it. So I think I've covered everything, and that's about as much as you need to know. If you're buying the sickle, look for that curve. Don't get it clicking out there, because otherwise you've got to do that. And then not too heavy a sickle, because you're only cutting like grass, aren't you? We are, you know, and at the right angle, and that should suit you. So I think that's everything. I'll probably think of something, but as I say, if it hasn't got a tang on it with a bolt there, then it isn't a sickle, it's a pressed one, and I wouldn't have one. I have never had one, I never will have one, and I'll buy a mower first before I do that. So I'm going to leave that with you. That's a little bit of information I thought I would add to bring that conversation to a closure. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you again hopefully. Bye bye.